Even though our lectionary calls for me to talk about lots of sheep and shepherds, I have been way too enamored of the post-Easter stories to go back to sheep. I did that for the children, but for you, we're going to be talking a little bit about a fish fry. But even though you have the verses in your bulletin, I've even changed those as well. Not completely, but somewhat. So if you want to join me, I'm in the book of John, chapter 19. John 19, verses 40 to 42. And then in chapter 20. They took the body of Jesus and wrapped it with the spices in linen cloths, according to the burial custom of the Jewish people. Now there was a garden in the place where he was crucified, and in the garden there was a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. And so because it was the Jewish day of preparation, and the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. Early on the first day of the week, while it was dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Going down to verse 11. But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb, and as she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. And they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to him, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" And Mary, supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." And Jesus said to her, "Mary, Mary." She turned to him and said in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Then we go to the book of Luke in chapter 24, verse 36. The two men that have been on the road to Emmaus have fled back to Jerusalem to tell the disciples what they had seen. Verse 36, while they were talking about this, Jesus himself stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." They were startled and they were terrified and they thought they were seeing a ghost. And Jesus said to them, "Why are you frightened and why do doubts arise in your hearts? Look at my hands and my feet. See that it is I myself. Touch me and see. For a ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see that I have." And when he had said this, he showed them his hands and his feet. While in their joy they were disbelieving and still wondering, he said to them, "Have you anything here to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish. And he took the fish and he ate it in their presence. The word of the Lord. Well, it was, in fact, a dark and stormy night some years ago here in Tucson. For those of you who remember my story, you will recall that I was checking on the sanctuary building about 10 o'clock at night as I was leaving the office and headed to the parking lot. I was certain as I passed through during this lightning and thunder that I heard a noise downstairs. Now, for those of you who were aware of the catacombs back before they had been renovated, they were nasty. They were old, they were musty, they were rain-stained. Frankly, what they were was an area that was perfect for a decrepit, haunted-type hallway. And you may recall, as I walked by the last room at the end of the dark hall, I saw a man lying down on the floor with his arm raised up in the air. To say I was startled and frightened would be a huge understatement. Between the thunder and my voice half shouting, "Don't you dare move!" I moved closer to this man on the floor with his arm outstretched. But I think I was more terrified than he was. Fear and trembling, lightning and thunder. Well, it didn't take long before I realized that this life-size mannequin was the one that we had stored from the painting class that met out back in our education center. As you can tell, it left a lasting impression on me, mostly of feeling foolish or fearful, and I can't decide which one. Now, if that apparition had asked for something to eat, then I think fear would have been far more of a prevailing impression than how I regained from that. But our story today in the Gospel of John and in the Gospel of Luke tells us about 11 disciples that were still in Jerusalem, who had gathered in a room in those terrifying days following the crucifixion. And why not? They should have been afraid because the soldiers and the Jewish leaders were looking for them. Mary Magdalene was, of course, the first person that Jesus appeared to, and yet scholasticism almost blows Mary completely off. And Jesus has chosen her to be the first one that he sees. And she runs back from the tomb to the disciples and she says, "I have seen the Lord." And they listened intently to the events that the two men described, the ones that had fled back from Emmaus. And they came back that 7-mile trek from Emmaus to Jerusalem. And as they were standing there telling the story of how they had seen Jesus in the breaking of the bread, Jesus suddenly stood among them. "Peace be with you." And all were startled and frightened and supposed they had seen a ghost. This divided appearance story of Jesus to Mary of Magdala, to the disciples and those with them in the Jerusalem house, because there were more than just the 11, to those on the Emmaus road and to the fishermen on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. They're fascinating. But what does it all mean? I mean, we usually, as I said last week, we usually don't talk about these post-Easter stories, but I think that they are incredibly important. And I think that they're important for an incredibly important reason. Their meaning is profound because once we recognize the risen Christ, wherever that may be, wherever we might see Christ, these stories challenge us to go out, to be sent out, and to share good news. Why? Well, because Christ died for us so that we can live on the Easter side of life. They force Christians to suspend that which we think is reality and move forward based on faith. There is nothing rational about those post-Easter stories. Luke and John write about people who are so startled and so filled with questions. The people do not recognize Jesus because he is so totally and utterly out of context for them at that point. And I think that's what happens in our own lives. 35 years ago, on a bright, breezy day in Hollywood, a woman came to the door of the church office where I worked with a large jar of coins. She was with a group that had been meeting with our church for several months. We hadn't expected them to pay. We didn't ask them to pay anything, but they wanted to make a donation. And so she came over, and I saw her come over with this large jar of coins and some dollar bills. And darn it, I thought, I don't have time to count all these coins and give her a receipt. Darn. Not only darn, but then she trips over the threshold of the door as she comes in, and this large glass jar with coins smashes all over the lobby floor, and there are coins and bills and shards of glass everywhere. I think I thought something more than darn at that point, but she apologized profusely. It was so hard to be upset with someone that was so nice about what had just happened. And I think I said something like, look, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. And then she said something that caused me to pause and look more closely at her. You know how we see people sometimes, we look at them but we really don't see them? Well, I really looked at her and I really began to see a person I recognized, and I realized that this annoying woman, along with her many coins that came regularly and faithfully to the office, was the woman who played Caroline Ingalls, the mother of the Ingalls family on the TV show Little House on the Prairie. Unrecognizable and out of context, and later I felt badly, not because of who she was, but because part of my calling was to be to a ministry of compassion, no matter who she was. A year prior to that, at the same church, I conducted a wedding for Michael. Michael was an amazing young man that I had gotten to know, who had been living in a Christian halfway house for addicts, drug addicts and alcohol addicts, next to the church. And he was going to get married. And I met with the bride and groom ahead of time. We decided we really didn't need a rehearsal, that they wanted lots of photos for their special day. And you know what? I wanted that wedding to be so perfect for these two people. I really did. And on the day of the wedding, I introduced myself as Bill to the groomsmen, all in tuxedo coats, ties, and jeans. It's Hollywood. I got to groomsman number 4. Hello, I'm Bill. Hello, I'm Bill. Hello, I'm Bill. I got to groomsman number 4, and I got to tell you, he was scruffy. He had hard-bitten features on his face, and his hair, well, his hair looked like he had just plugged it into a light socket. Have any of you ever used, the electric mixer and you kind of like that? Well, it looks like he had taken that to his hair and set his hair that day with the electric mixer. And with all righteous judgment, I thought, great, just great, I'm Bill. So I shook his hand. He says, I'm Paul. I said, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Paul, he said with an accent. Later at the reception in the church hall, someone came up to me and said, Pastor Bill, did you get a chance to meet one of the groomsmen, Bob Dylan? It shouldn't have mattered. He did look like that, though. It shouldn't have mattered. He cared enough about Michael to be there for him. He was practicing the ministry of presence. Mary Magdalene, of all people, supposed Jesus to be a gardener. A gardener? What the heck is that all about? Why was she unable to recognize the Son of God? And I'll tell you what I told 8 o'clock. I went to Google the other day to try and figure out why. And you know what some preeminent scholars said? They said because she was crying so hard that she was unable through the tears to recognize Jesus, or she was standing too far away. You've got to be kidding me. Christ speaks one word, Mary. And Mary begins the ministry of proclamation. With one word, Rabboni, teacher. Right before I left Hollywood, a young woman was lying sprawled out on the small lawn in front of the church facing Hollywood Boulevard, and she looked ancient. Her face was covered with bruises and lacerations, and she reeked of alcohol, and she was skin and bones. And as tears streamed down her face, she told me that her pet had just beaten her up. I prayed with her, and as I did, I was shocked to recognize this girl in her mid-20s who had come to the church office door 2 years earlier, fresh from the Midwest, seeking fame and fortune on the mean streets of Tinseltown. It was heartbreaking. But fortunately, a woman's shelter offered her refuge, a ministry of hospitality with no strings attached. I guess it was about a year ago here at Trinity, a couple showed up at the office. I was in the copy room, surrounded, as I usually am, with stacks of paperwork. Looking out at the courtyard and looking at the couple, I said to Alice Smedley, I said, Alice, would you mind checking what that couple needs, please? So she opens the door and says, there are a couple of folks who'd like to see you. And I looked at them for a minute. And then I shattered the sound barrier with one of my famous, oh my God! As I practically jumped into the arms of our former pastor, Jack Baca, and his wife, Ellen. The sweet blessing of recognition. It is so amazing when somebody we love or someone who loves us, there is that moment of amazing recognition. Jesus ascended into heaven thousands of years ago, but I continue to see him on the faces and in the lives of so many people that I have met in my 40 years of ministry. People from all walks and all circumstances of life. And when I do, I realize that I am in the presence of holy faces. People who are children of God. And I'm still the broken one in that meeting and greeting. Friends, we are so familiar with the Passion story, are we not? We see on Palm Sunday the Savior riding on the road to Jerusalem. We know that Savior. We know that Jesus. He teaches lessons in Jerusalem that fan the flames of indignation and anger among the Jewish leadership. Thursday night, we see Jesus and the disciples in the upper room, and we hear the words, "This is my body given for you." And later, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. We know that, Jesus. On Good Friday, a black cloth is draped over our cross, reminding us of the cruelty and the torture that was inflicted on the Son of God. We feel this brutalized Jesus. Then on Easter morning, we rejoice as the family of God, for our future is a future that hinges on the resurrection of Jesus Christ. No matter the insanity of the world, the violence, the prejudice, the anger, the persecution, Jesus rose for us, and our lives can never be the same. But for many of the disciples, no matter how many times Jesus had told them that he must suffer, that he must die, then rise after 3 days. They didn't get it. They didn't get it at all. So imagine a room behind the city walls of Jerusalem in ancient times. The disciples cower behind the chaos. Like today, they're caught between reality and confusion without a grounding point. Their faith was shaken to the core, and then guess what? The unexpected happens. Jesus comes back. He returns first to Mary, then to the disciples and the others. Then he appears to the people on the road to Emmaus. And of course, then he's out there on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. And in that room in Jerusalem, he says, "Have you anything to eat?" Can you get your head around that? Do you have anything here to eat? And they say, "Yeah, we've got a piece of broiled fish in the fridge, so let's see what we can do for you." Kind Can a ghost really eat fish? For that matter, can a ghost really eat anything? Well, I've heard from some people that ghosts really are able to drink something called evaporated milk. And I'm sure if he had been merely a skeleton, you know what's coming next, he would have said, bon appetit, as the fish was eaten. Okay, enough of that. Finally, at the Sea of Galilee, after a long night without catching any fish, Jesus appears on the shore. And he tells his beloved disciples to again cast out their net. He says, cast it out on the right side of the boat, the starboard side of the boat. And this time the nets are filled. We begin to understand there's something more about this analogy that calls us to be part of the kingdom growth. The disciples will learn to become fishers of humanity, just like we will try and become fishers of humanity. Then Jesus demonstrates extraordinary hospitality to those fishermen. By what? By baking bread and by frying fish as they hurry to the shore to be with the Savior. Today, friends, today all who believe in Christ or who wish to welcome Christ into their hearts will be fed at this table by the saving act of forgiveness and love in the breaking of bread. This table is where we recognize the love of the Savior. That recognition leads to proclamation, which leads to conversion, which leads to the ministry of service to an incredibly needy world. So I leave you with this. May God give each and every one of you the strength and courage to be an incredible part of this great ministry. Amen.